Hey, what's up everybody? MashCorp's here with another video mock review. This time with Baron Makuta form version, I don't know. I talked about this in my most recent review of Ponua. Excuse me. Where I call the Ponua version 6.2 because it's the sixth version of him, but it's the second version done in a system build. And this is sort of the same thing, where I've had multiple versions of Baron. I said his name right at the beginning, right? I hope I did. If I didn't, this is me actually saying that it's Baron. I've had a couple different versions of Baron's form. Excuse me, just taking a drink. In Bionicle. But this is the first version that I've done in system. All that being said, I also don't know how many Bionicle ones I made, like typical Bionicle ones. So it's something 0.1. I want to say it's like 3 or 4.1. I didn't make a huge amount of Baron versions. There's only, I think, 2 or 3 on my actual channel. Because I might have made like one more outside of that I never uploaded. But I don't really know. But yeah, I also talked about, I have a review of his Toa form, which is actually still a full Bionicle build. And sort of the intricacies of that and why I did that and its story purposes. And excuse me. I still have that figure, but when I built that, or long before I built that, I did take apart the Bionicle version of Baron that was the full like Titan Makuta form. And I'm going to turn his head. Side note, this is bugging me. Like, the framing... Okay. That was a minor thing. Sorry. Anyways. That entirely derailed me. Wow. I guess, essentially, I wanted a version of him that was still, like, the Titan form. But I had taken that apart a long time ago, so I decided to... remake it, but now I'm doing basically everything in system. Given that Bionicle was discontinued, it's hard to find parts, and I just have more system stuff. So I rebuilt him in system, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. I guess I'll get into that more at the end. But yeah, in a couple of my other reviews, I keep talking about how I keep making these system guys, and I keep making them bigger and bigger. Like, I built Hemlock, and I was like, oh, he turns out to be the biggest guy I've made. And then I built Ponua again. I'm like, oh, now he's the biggest character I've made. And then I built this guy, and now he's the biggest character I've made. And he's also the heaviest. If you can kind of tell, he's got a lot of very small parts. He's very intricate build, and he's very heavy build. But I kind of upped some of the design elements of it on this build. So it ends up working out, and he's fairly solid. So let's just get into it. It's kind of a pain to properly disassemble, so I'm not entirely sure how I want to do this. Typically, I tear everything out, tear all of my figures in half at the waist, but his waist is not suited to that, as you can kind of see, because it has these like big chunky ratcheting joints. So let's just start by taking off his legs and kind of just going from there. So I'm going to lift him out of frame for this real quick. Because, who wants to see dismemberment on camera? Okay, so I guess I can take the foot off too. So, in keeping with the typical tradition of me trying to rebuild, I'm just trying to figure out how to fit this in frame. Here we go. Trying to rebuild characters in... There we go. In Lego, I try and recreate the look of the Bionicle pieces as closely as possible. So this foot, on the original, it had the 3 toes in the front from like a Paraka foot, and then in the back it had like the mini Paraka foot that they use for like the Shadow Matoran, that had the 2 prongs. So here, of course, I do have the 3 in the front. But this time they're articulated, which is, fun. And then in the back, I was going to initially like have it kind of split. Like I was going to use like a hinge joint and kind of hinge one of these out. give the idea of like the 2 feet, but I felt for stability reasons it would have been easier for me to just join them, but I still kind of kept like this cascading effect here, so you get the idea of like the 2. And then on the side I just have a circle. No real reason behind that. I guess you could kind of say that it's similar to the joining, what do you call that, like lift arm piece on the side. I don't know, that's, you know, not as evident. The big difference with the feet is that they're all black aside from the silver toes, and then on the original they were red. So going into the lower legs are probably the part that's the least accurate, but I still think they look good. So like the front, on the original, it just had a bunch of like Vizirac feet, so like stacked together, and then I didn't really do that here. I kind of was just kind of going like sort of freestyle with this, and there's not like, I guess you could kind of say that these parts on the side vaguely resemble the idea of Vizirac feet, but that's kind of a stretch. You know, it really isn't that similar. I played around with the idea of trying to build like more of these and then stacking them in a certain way, but I don't know, it just didn't look really the way I wanted to, didn't really have the profile I wanted, so I'm just kind of keeping it like this. The sides, you'll see, are very reminiscent of Ponua's. I'm trying to get this in the light properly. There we go. Are very reminiscent of Ponua's, with kind of this piece here and then slanting down. Like this side, I think, is like almost exactly identical, even in size. Like I think it's the same length, but then it, you know, eases more into this design here. And I really like that look on Ponua, so I carried it over here. This guy's got a lot of the design elements taken from some of the best stuff taken from both Ponua and Hemlock, were, you know, my big main builds of this kind of style. Sorry. And I think it comes together to make like a really effective, you know, one of the best ones in this style that I've made. On the back, I really like this detailing. It's just a bunch of those like side bracket pieces stacked, and then you have all this like detailing, kind of like pistons here and like a vent. I tried to get to the lineup kind of here, but I actually, so I kind of bring it all together, but I couldn't get it to the right height, so I just kind of left it, and I think it still looks really good. You'll notice on the top here, there's this like curve piece, and that flows into, one second while I reassemble. So that flows into the hole, the knee kind of on a hole. So I really like how the knees turned out here. Let me see if I can get this in the light better. Move his arm out of the way. So I really like how the knees turned out here. I use this, you know, circular piece, like the hat kind of thing on the inside, and then I used these parts on the inside. Or I use this on the outside, I use this on the inside, obviously. You can see it's just a typical ratchet joint, but it hides in there really well. You can see it all sort of comes together here in the front, and this is right where the ratchet is, so when you bend it, it really looks like that's just an extension of that part of his body. Or not an extension, or like a, it's like that's the point where it pivots, because it is, but it's like obviously not actually connected here in any way. In here you can see there's a little detailing right there. And then the way this like all bends together and then forms this sort of hooded shape and then comes down, I really like that. On the original, I'm just going to use my chair. Okay, my typical review spot here is not the best setup in terms of like where I can stack the camera and then get my arms in and everything. So I'm kind of at an angle here. Anyways, so I really like how this like flows into it and then bends in. And then I was thinking about putting some detailing here, like on the insides, which I kind of did with like the dots here. But I thought about doing more, but I think this looks pretty good still. In terms of like designing this to look like the original. So the original had really large thighs. And I also talked about how Ponua had really large thighs, but I didn't really carry that across well. On this one, I feel like I did a much better job. On the original, it had like the big, what are those characters called? They're the villains from Metru. I can't even remember, but they had those big like thigh looking like really wide pieces. on the thigh. I guess they weren't thighs, but I had them on the thigh. That's what I was trying to say. So I kept that kind of wide profile here, and there's a hand joint on the front that folded down, and that's what this is. And I think that looks really good. On the side, I don't remember. Oh, on the side, I remember I put some like Nuva armor, some like dark red Nuva armor. I didn't even know that piece existed. I don't even know where I got that, but I put it right here on the original, and I didn't do that here. The side is not, I feel like, as effective. It's kind of just flat. But a big part of that is because I had to build so much into the rear of this figure. So like I said, he's a really tall figure. He's a really heavy figure. Excuse me. So I had to build these additional supports in. They're just typical mixer joints, you know, and they're okay. They're not so strong that they hold back him from being able to just move freely. But they're also not strong enough where sometimes, like, if I do tilt him, his leg will still fall. But that's better than definitely was before. Like, if I just like pop this off, you'll see how much quicker the leg falls. All right, I gotta put that back on now. This is improvisational reviewing. All of my reviews are improvisational. I don't know why I made it. Anyways, you know, they look good, and like the original had these supports on there, and that was something that was kind of defining about his character, or at least in my mind. So I was glad I was able to bring them into the Lego version, both practically and aesthetically. Because part of the character is that he's always like kind of upgrading himself. Oh, I did not cover the waist. Hold on. Move that arm. Okay, so the waist, I like it a lot. The original had, I think it was just like a Metru chest, and then like it was pretty basic. But this one I think works really well. It's got this curved line, which same piece here, so that flows together well. You got a really good curve of all these pieces. These three pieces line up really well. These side panels are maybe the only thing, or these side like wedges are the only thing that I think is kind of lacking. You know, they're basically the exact same design plus one 1x1 flat tile as Ponua's, and they don't have a lot of depth kind of like in this direction. So I might change that eventually, try and like form it all together better. On the side here, I really like the use of the nozzle here. Yeah, and then the big thing in the waist is this huge, crunchy, giant ratcheting joint. So, okay, I can finally set this guy down. You gonna stay? Good. So, yeah, that was like I think the first thing I built on him was the waist, because I knew I wanted this guy to be big, so I knew I wanted to use those pieces as the waist, because I played with the idea those times beforehand. I even thought about using them for the knees, but I think that would have been too much, because honestly, how I use them in the waist, they're really tough, because there are two of them right next to each other, so there's like a lot of friction there, and like the whole figure like will shake when you tilt when you move it. So maybe it's a little bit much, but like I used to. Two is definitely, I think, just too much in general. Like they're designed to only be one, like the AT-ATs, where you mainly get that kind of piece, only comes with one. But I like the symmetry of it, and you can see like I built it so that like the lighter gray parts are in the inside, so it adds more to that like angularness, the angularness here of his whole torso. Which I think I did really well on this figure. I kind of talked about how the angularness on Ponu was a bit extreme. There's a weird noise to come out of my mug. Whereas this time, I think I did a good job of like building it out. I think like especially here on the side, like these kind of like cascading like tiers on the curvature look really good. And like here, if I put it on the side, I think it like really gives that like stocky look while still giving like a slim look. That's very contradictorial. Is that even a word? But like I think it looks really good here. And a big part of that is because because I chose to use these really big ratcheters. It really widened out the waist, as opposed to if you use, you know, a piece like a typical ratchet joint, a Knights Kingdom joint like this. you are kind of forced to narrow it down to that point at some point. Whereas this, also because this only moves in one direction, there's no waist rotation, there's only a waist crunch. It allows you to kind of widen it out a little bit. So I'm going to pull this closer to the camera here so we can get a little bit more details. Can I tilt? Tilt, please. Oop. No, that's not what I wanted to do. There we go. So yeah, you definitely can't see it in there. But there, if I tilt it, maybe you can. No, not really. But like right in here, there's some teeth pieces, which I think look cool. I like this kind of like gap in here in the middle. Like it's not there for practical reasons. Like, okay, this is like the one time I'm going to crunch his waist because it's so hard to do. But yeah, you can see how rashy that is. And like, it's not necessary. Like that whole gap down there is not necessary. Like you can get it to bend without that. But I don't know. I like the way it looks. All right. Yeah. See, I just like splayed his legs and just threw everything all over the place and trying to do that. Come on. Bounce. Feet. There you go. Excuse me. But I still, yeah, like I said, I like how this looks, and I like the whole angularness of it. On the original, which I'm obviously not going to stop talking about because that's the whole design element of this guy. On the original, he had a Metru Matoran chest piece, and then on the sides, he had Vizirac feet. And I think this like recreates it really well. Like you can see this curve here looks a lot like that Matoran chest plate, and then these like sort of like tiers that I was talking about earlier, there really recreate the look of Vizirac feet. I also kind of like it just because it creates this like musculature look. Like if you ever like, those are like muscles on like real people, which again, like bionicles don't really necessarily have to have the physiology of humans, but I just like that look. I think it looks cool, and adds like a certain sort of realism to it that I don't know. I don't do often, but I would like to do more often. I like that I did it here. I guess we can take the arms off so you can get a better look at this. Start with this arm because it's my least favorite arm, and I'll get to why later. Getting into more detail here. So yeah, there's a flat piece. You have another one of like these pieces there. That's a better angle. And you can see there's more of the tiering. You can also see kind of just like how complex some of the stuff in here. You can see all the stacking of the tiles there. Let's continue. Let's keep talking about the chest details. So we've got like a tooth there, a lot of flat tiles. Something I should also talk about here is just the way the chest is built is really unique. I've never seen it done before, but it's such an internal thing. Like if I posted pictures of this guy and I didn't explain how it worked, I don't think you'd necessarily see it either. So maybe people have done it before and I just haven't seen it explained. But essentially the way it works is, so like the side panels here are attached, like there's a main core where like this, the big ratchet joint is attached. And then there's studs on the side there that attach these parts. But then on the sides of these, you have those same overhang bracket pieces. So that go on the side of there. So those studs end up facing the same direction as the main studs. That's not a great way of explaining it. It makes sense to me because I know what it looks like. Maybe you can picture it. It's really hard to. Also, a fact of this is it's really stable, but it's also really hard to take off. Or otherwise, I would just show you. But yeah, it's kind of a pain to take off, so I can't, unfortunately. Sorry. See, the one thing here that kind of doesn't fit is these pieces here are gray, and whenever I look at them, I always think they're black and they're just reflecting light differently. But they're definitely gray and they're meant to be gray. Like gray's an aspect of his color scheme, so and that looks a bit silly. Or it doesn't look silly, but like the way I look at it is a bit silly. I don't know. Yeah. All right, we're gonna move around to the back now. Just trying to catch the light properly. So here you have the back panels that kind of fold to like follow the curvature. Like if you bend it out here, you can see there's a piece there. But then if I just put that piece there, this thing would jut out weirdly. So I have this here, and then it ends up looking really good. And then there I have you sort of like wing tip things that fold up and then line up just with this. I think they look good. They're something that's not really from the original, but they are in the same way. I'll kind of get to that when I get around more to the collarbone. You can see more cascading of the tears and stuff in the bag. And then in the very back here, you see this little like panel thing. And if you actually look at it, it's very similar. Ouch. It's very similar to the one on the back of Ponua that I talked about that I like and I hate. But there is a reason that it's there beyond just like I had those pieces and it's like a cool design aspect. I didn't mention this at the beginning but a couple months ago I went onto Bricklink and I have a complete part list of how to build Ponua, like all the parts that you need, and then I have like a very amateurish instruction set. So I went on there and I ordered all those parts in black. And I built a fully black version of Ponua. I'm sorry if you hear me clicking. I'm playing with his left arm. I built a fully black version of Ponua. And I have a video that's like 2 hours long of me like actually building it. You don't know if I'll upload or not because it's honestly not that captivating. But in somewhere amongst that video, I talk about taking that apart and using it to build something else because I wasn't super sure how much I liked the idea. Well, I ended up doing that. So the reason I have these pieces in black is because I ordered them for Ponua Black. So I thought I'd use them here and then I tie it back into Ponua. So if you're vaguely familiar with my story, which I would be impressed if you are because I really don't talk about it. It's just like bits and bobs there in reviews and stuff. You know that Ponua is a guardian on this like sacred island. He guards this certain item that's like this watch. It's like a pocket watch type deal. And that's how Ponua and Baron meet, is that Baron goes to steal the watch. So I decided to add this little thing here because I had a big cavity in the back here that's similar to the one on the front that I didn't like as much as the one on the front. So I was trying to figure out a way to fill it in. And what I ended up doing is I built this thing, but the cavity was still there. It like obviously you can't like it doesn't look like anything's there, but there is space in there. So I decided what can I put in the space, and I decided to build this little canopy. And I'm going to be careful with this because if I open it the wrong way, it will take me an hour to get it closed again. So you can actually fold this open, and then in there you can see there's the watch. I'm not going to go through the effort to take it out because, like I said, it's kind of a pain to get in there and then get out again. But yeah, it's in there and then it's tied. Whoa! Oh my gosh, that was a big fall. I'll just keep explaining while I put this back together. Yeah, it's tied into a rod back there. And I think it's a cool little thing. It's like a little secret because he carries that watch with him throughout the story. So I think it's a cool little thing to have it actually like hidden on his person. Even though he's not necessarily in this form for much of the story. Again, my story's this like all convoluted mess that, I mean, makes sense to me, but is impossible to follow if you're not me. Anyways, so I thought I really like that as a little detail. Like whenever I build these characters, I like to think of them as like masterpiece characters. Like if you're into Transformers, you know that they have the masterpiece line, and those figures always come with like these little like odds and ends that represent like super random things from the series, like from that one obscure episode. So I like that I was able to fit something like that in for him. Another little thing that I'm going to talk about now that's like a little like Easter egg kind of is, or not even Easter egg, but just like small facet of him is this little thing on his shoulder that is a little reconnaissance drone right there. So if you go back and you watch old slideshows, on some of the versions he has this thing that goes up on his right shoulder, and that was always like a little like scanning reconnaissance type item. But I never explained that, but just in like my own mind, that's what it was. Wow, this focus is not nice. So on this version, I decided to build an actual one. So I actually have two of them because I lost this one and then I built another one. So I have two, but this is the original. So this little dude, it's a very simple build. Like it's like very, I'm sure you can figure out how to build it. It's got a little slope piece there. That's the most special thing about it, is the use of that slope piece. Little dome that like probably has like a camera and like a transmitter and all that. Wings, little guns. All right, my camera ran out of storage, so like the videos are kind of messed up. So apologies if this is kind of a choppy edit I had to do afterwards. But I switched to like a different storage space, so hopefully it should work now. But yeah, I was talking about a little scanner droid. Just a little thing pops onto his shoulder there. So, and then moving on, I'm going to talk about like his sort of collarbone stuff here. I'm going to remove the head real quick, and then I'll probably keep it removed because we'll talk about that at the end. So you can see here, it's like just a lot of layering of like tiles and stuff. On the original, he had these two like articulated arms that folded around his neck to form this like cowl, and that's kind of this is kind of what that represents, are those like articulated arms. And then just like the whole cowl, but the whole cowl design is still here. You know, you have the curvature there. I quite like that design, and I liked it on the original a lot, and I think it comes across better here, because on the original it was more like, oh, I have these parts, I guess I'll use it for that. Sorry, I'm fixing his foot. Whereas this one, it's more of a legitimate, I broke another thing. It's more of like a legitimate design that effort went into. And then right here on the side, let's see if, you have like these fully articulated shoulder plates that are on a ball joint up here, and then all of the individual panels on the side here are also articulated to fold down and around. I really like this. I especially like using the angled ones in the front, but then the flat ones in the back, because on the back, I don't know, it's just like utilitarian, but on the front, it gives like this curve that falls into the rest of his body, and I really like that. So moving on to probably my favorite part, and definitely the most faithful recreation on this figure, is the arms. So specifically, I'm using his right arm because something you might notice, and you can even notice in the frame right now, is the right arm, the top shoulder bit here on the right is red, and on the left is black. That's because I can't find another one in red. I can't do it. I have no idea where it is. I also have no idea why my camera doesn't want to focus on this right now. Well, I'll take it off auto, and hopefully that'll help. There we go. So I only have one. So I only have it on the right side. So that's something that bugs me. But hopefully I'll get it fixed eventually. The upper arm design is very simple, mostly because it's covered by a shoulder pad, so it doesn't need that much detail necessarily, but I used a ridge part here to kind of give like a geared look on the inside. And then it's just some flat panels and like a curved piece here. On the original, his shoulders had Vakama masks on them, which is why the Toa form of him has a Vakama mask as its mask. And I kind of recreated it here, but realistically I didn't. Like, there's probably a better way I could have done it, but because like this looks nothing like a Vakama mask. It's also out of focus, but I don't need to fix it because I'm gonna stay anyways. But I think thematically this creates the same sort of idea of it like draping over the shoulder. The lower arm is what I really like. So on the original, just because I was, I guess, a worse Mockus at the time, on the original, his lower arm was just like, didn't have any red, which was just bad. I should have planned that better in his design. But in this case, I've made it so his lower arms are actually like these robotic add-ons that are like these full pistons. You can see like it starts in the back here, goes through here, and then you have a junction box and like some side panels and stuff. And this is very, very reminiscent of the original, where he had a, was like, not Ignica, when they went to like the light, they had the Optitorns and stuff. Oh geez. It had one of those turbine pieces in there. So, and then it had like these two panels on the side, and then like this big built up thing at the bottom with an engine. And I created that, I think, really well. It has the engine bits here, it's got the curve here, and like the side panels. I really actually do like how this turned out, especially like how it's built, because if you notice here, these two pieces are facing the wrong way and aren't connected by any studs. And they're not connected anywhere else. Like if I take off this bottom piece, oh, you can see a little secret is that I use this because I don't need an actual color there. You see they're not attached in any way. You can take off all of the side panels and this thing still stays together, which isn't necessarily that hard. You just put a rod through it. What I like is that it has a rod through it. That's how it was built. But then it also has a ball joint there at the end. I'll put this back together off camera. And I think that worked out really well. It's like a little loose. It's like a little loose, but not so bad. Like I can still fling it around and like it doesn't even come out that much, if at all. It doesn't. So it still holds pretty well. And then the hands are just, you know, my typical hand design, with the bricks facing in, and I don't know, it's pretty typical. Nothing special at this point. I like the colors. It's essentially the same color set on the original because he had the same sort of finger design or finger set. Also, shoulders, of course, are inverted ball joints because what else would I do at this day and age? I just snapped my autofocus back on, and I shouldn't have done that because now I'm going to talk about the head. So I'm going to turn autofocus back on manual and then bring the head in and there. So the head, I also spent a long time working on this because I knew I wanted to be good, because the head was like the main reason I built the original, because it was based off a Rudaka head. So I spent a long time on this and it turned out basically perfect. I absolutely love this design, and I don't think I'd do it any other way. So you'll notice he does have a functioning jaw, just like the Rudaka model had. Just for comparison, I actually do have the original head here to compare. So you can see just how similar they are and how similarly out of focus they are. There we go. So you can see I think I got it down really well. Obviously it doesn't have some of the same subtlety in the curves that the Bionicle version does, because the Bionicle version is like their own personal mold, whereas this built out of bricks. But I still think it turned out really well. I like the use of these pieces for the eyes. Sorry, I did tend to my dog. I like the use of these pieces for the eyes. I like using the little studs here as like the hinge point for the jaw. And then on the back here, you've got the big communication headset, which the original did have. It was a huge Vizrak foot, and it was comically large. Here, I think this is a much better size, but it still has like the pointedness to it, which I really like. And then it's just all built up around that. It's a pretty simple design. It's kind of like you've got two bricks in there with studs on the side facing out, and then there's actually, I can kind of tear off an eye here. There's actually one of like those pieces in the middle there, if you can kind of see that. And the little Lego math on like the eighth of a stud distances worked out really well. All right, come back on auto. There we go. So yeah, that essentially covers it for the figure. The only other thing to mention is he does have this weapon, which I took off his back earlier when I disassembled him. It's definitely not going to get fit into frame, so I'm not even going to... Oh, I mean, I guess it fits back all the way back there. I'll move him to the side and then stay. Okay, so yeah, it's just a big scythe. He had it in the original, or had a similar version in the original. It didn't have this blade piece because this is obviously new, but it had a similar blade piece. And then this is like the flat form, and then you just pop it off here, pop it there, and then that's the scythe form. The original had that too, but it actually had it on a folding hinge. I feel like this is easier and less messy. And then it just pops into his hand on a stud, so I will do that very quickly. Something I didn't talk about with the arms, but I can kind of show off here is because of the way the arm hinge is built, you can get a absolutely ludicrous amount of bend from the arm. As you can see, it gets like, it has like almost a full 180 degree level of bend on it. Let's try and frame it. There you go. Which I really like. I decided to bend it back to do that because it was easier to build the arm that way, to get this piston look if I built it that way. And I also knew that it would give this sort of range of motion, which I really like. It really gives him a lot more emotion with his arms, especially considering his shoulders are kind of locked up because of the shoulder pads. So I'm gonna do some size comparisons. As usual, we'll do a Lego figure, even though it's kind of fruitless. But oh no, he fell. No. Here's the Red Hood costume. Oh, his actual hood came off. Jeez, I did not notice that. Where'd that go? There we go. Just pop that on his shoulder. There. And then also we'll throw in oh, he doesn't even fit in frame. But yeah, you can see how giant he is in comparison to Toa. Oh, there goes Red Hood again. Toa size Baron here. I guess if I pop him back here, and then I angle it down. There we go. So now you can kind of see the size comparison there. And then lastly, like I said, he's now my biggest figure because here's him next to Ponua, who, as you can see, is significantly dwarfed. Go on, stay. There we go. Oh my gosh. Toa Baron is just, this is not his kind of frame. Excuse me. But yeah, you can see like the shoulder line. It's like a solid like 2 bricks probably up, and then the heads get kind of close because the neck design puts the neck ball joint like really close to his jaw, where it doesn't do that as much with Ponua. But yeah, no, he's still a giant figure, and I when I was designing Ponua, I made sure to make it so that other than his legs, which I used as like a base weight, he was relatively light. I did not go to those same efforts when I built Baron. If anything, I went kind of out of my way to put as much details into it, which resulted in him being so ludicrously heavy. He's also incredibly tall, or incredibly like wide of a figure too. Got a lot of bulk. Let's see. I have Arieli over here? Let's see if he even really fits in the frame. He's about the same. Yeah, he fits a little bit better just because of where he's positioned, but it's about the same size as Toa Baron, so not much better. But yeah, that's kind of cool. There's all of my forms of my main 2 self MOCs present. Not fitting at all in like a good, there's not a good photo of them all, but it's a cool little representation. I really like having all these figures, and rounding it out with Baron. Now I have their original forms, and then their miniaturized forms, and then I have the Lego builds, and then I have the Bionicle builds. And he's just a great centerpiece. I honestly think he's, like, him and Ponua are my 2 best system builds, and then Arieli and Toa Baron are my 2 best Bionicle builds. So at least in that style, in terms of like the more modernized style, I would say something like, I don't know, like Akiraizia or like Riva is maybe better. I don't know. You guys don't even know those figures. I haven't posted them anywhere, but yeah. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope I can get it edited properly with how many times the video got cut off. But yeah, so I'll see you guys next time.